right, welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of Thursday, February 26th. We'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Commissioner Grissom, would you mind taking roll?
Sure. Okay. Let's see here. How do I do this?
Any way you like.
Chairperson, Larry Fox.
Here.
Vice Chairperson, Jeff Newsom. Absent. Secretary Keith Boyd. Absent. Joseph Colaney.
Yep, there you go.
Chairperson.
Here.
Myself, here. Chairperson Michael Mitchell, absent. Chairperson Tom Murphy.
Here.
Good. And then our planning director, David Campbell.
Perfect. Thank you. Next up, item 4, approval of our meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Colaney, second from Commissioner Grissom. Are there any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, item 5A, the Planning Commission meeting minutes of January 15th.
I would like to add something to them, to actually both meeting minutes.
Okay.
Is that allowed to just ask if we could?
Just make an
alteration, make a motion?
You just make a motion to add.
Okay. I've never done that before.
I don't know that we have.
Yeah, and here's what I would like to just offer. For these meeting minutes on the 15th, we had a discussion about our, it would be item 9, and it was about talking about our future land use designation, and it was for the planned industrial research. And in that discussion, what we asked in the discussion was that we get some statistics from other communities to help us make a decision on what to do.
Right.
I thought that, and that wasn't really addressed in this, and that was kind of a big part of our discussion. We were like, wonder if we have enough industrial, that area, and we thought, what do we do? And we said, let's go find out what other communities have for percentages.
So you just want to add a statement requested?
That was kind of how we left it. In fact, I know today we're going to have that information now to kind of look at.
So
I want to know process a little bit. Normally, in the old days, when you wanted to add something, you amended it, and that amendment was reflected in today's minutes. So it wouldn't, and then there would be, under the Open Meetings Act, the minutes that were amended will show that they've been revised, but they have to identify either strike through or in additional language. Is that how do you know how this works with the automatic system we have for doing our minutes?
With the automatic system that we have, frankly, I don't. I know that myself or someone else township staff's going to go in Monday and add the information that Sue's requesting, which is a good addition to this. Procedurally, you would make a motion to, amend the January 15th minutes reflecting, Sue Grissom's suggestion. And then, as far as the logistics of entering them into the agenda management system and finalizing them, I will figure that out on Monday.
Okay.
Okay. So should I start out making a motion, or what?
Sounds like it. Isn't that what you're recommending?
Yeah, I would suggest you make a motion to add the following language, or if you were striking something, you would say motion to strike, line 3 of paragraph 2 on page, So that's what you'd want to do, and then someone can support that, and then you take a vote.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to add the following language to our item 9 about the old and new business underneath A, the 2015 Comprehensive Plan Amendment. We did have much discussion, but I'd like to add language to also include that we asked for additional information about our other communities adjacent to our community on the percentage of the planned industrial research that those communities have.
Yes.
That's what I think would be important to add.
Okay. You have a second on that?
I'll support that.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes as amended from Commissioner Grissom, second from Commissioner Kalani. Anything else? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up would be item 5B, and this is Planning Commission meeting minutes of January 29th.
Here I go again. I don't ever do this.
You're fine.
So I guess can I ask a question before you make the motion, just to see what you
We'll
think?
let you. Go ahead.
Okay. So item 7 was when we listened to about Chestnut Development, and the developer came in and he explained what he wanted to do. We went through all of that, but I thought the intent of all of that was to get a read from us to see if we would be amenable to that higher density planning. That's why he came to us, so he would know if he should continue on what we were thinking. And I don't see any language about that. Is that important?
I think that would be, I agree. I think he was looking for, I don't think we voted on anything because it was informational, right?
No, the intent of that meeting was not to take any formal action.
That's right.
But it was a consensus that we thought the plan was viable and worth
Wildly pursue.
Right.
And again, I don't know, but I'm thinking maybe that has some validity to document that. I don't know.
I think it's important. I would actually agree with you. One of the things I noticed about both sets of minutes is that they're very general. When we do have discussion, they're not, I don't know, maybe this is the process, and it was more of this isn't more of a question to Larry. Do we keep these general, or do we have specific requests made by, like if I made a comment on something, is that getting recorded as Commissioner Kalani made a comment about X, Y, and Z, and is that getting reflected in the minutes, or not do that?
I could take a stab at answering that
Yeah,
one, too.
I think, go ahead.
So a couple things that are going on here. One, be nice to the minutes, because this is my first crack at actually writing them myself. Jokes aside, in the past, the township clerk, who, as you're well aware, was also the Planning Commission secretary, was drafting the minutes. And it was drafting them as a Word document, and that's the way we did it for a long time. Then the township acquired this agenda management software, and that changed the formatting of the minutes and the way we did them. And still, the township Clerk Hopkins, was handling that end of things. Now we've had to adjust our procedures with that, and we've obviously got a new township clerk, we've got a new planning commission secretary, and based on all that is now, we think going forward is going to be the planning department staff that's going to draft these meeting minutes. Now, I've had discussions about all of this with the township manager, and his take, and I'm getting to an answer to both of your questions. His take is that the minutes should generally stay pretty general, because now that we have these videos that are available on our website, and they're available to anyone who has access to the internet, and those videos will live on in perpetuity, that those videos can be where anyone can see firsthand what the nitty-gritty discussion was, and that the minutes, both at the township board level and at the planning commission level, should be fairly general. In fact, I know when I was talking to him about these minutes that you have in front of you, his thought was that this is probably more detailed than what needs to be reflected in the minutes, because we have the videos to go back to see what did Trustee Kalani say, what did Commissioner Grissom say. So while I'm happy to make these changes that we're talking about tonight, I think, unless the Planning Commission wants to give me some good feedback to take back to my boss, I think that we're trying to move toward some streamlined general minutes, so that everyone has an understanding that if you want more information, you can seek out the video.
Dave, how were the minutes done prior to, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
How are the minutes recorded prior to this change?
But like video recorded, you mean?
No, not necessarily. No, in the form that we're looking at now.
So the Clerk Hopkins was always sitting there and taking notes, and then he always had, going back a few years, an audio recording of the meeting, and then somewhere along the way, before my time, we started getting into the video recordings as well. And so my understanding was he would work his magic with using the notes from his meeting that he actually was in attendance for, using the audio recording, using the video recording, he would enhance those minutes, and those are the minutes that would come before you at a subsequent meeting for approval.
Joe.
I have a real problem with that explanation on the general versus some general notes that should go into the minutes, and for two reasons. One, none of the township board members are going to necessarily go back and listen to a planning commission meeting to hear what the remarks were. And if something comes before them, they, in the old days, they would get the minutes from a meeting of the information. Now, I know a lot of that you will put in a memo to the board, and I know you do that. You kind of, but they also want to get the understanding, of what some of the board members, planning commissioners may have had on a particular issue, what struck them as problematic, or maybe they had some good points or arguments as to why something. I mean, it recently came up on the ground development, in fact, at the board. There are some board members who are concerned with that being a much higher density, or in terms of the number of houses being proposed for that 9-acre parcel. So I'd like to have that. Well, maybe that needs to be a discussion perhaps between the manager and the board, but I like to be able to go back to a set of minutes and go, gosh, I've got a pretty decent memory, but it's not faultless, and I like to be able to go back to an old set of minutes and go, oh yeah, I remember I had that discussion, and I remember bringing that point up, or I remember when Murphy brought up something, Tom brought up something, so I think we need to have a little discussion, Larry, about this. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but
Well, they have historically been more detailed. They did, and I'm going to defend Dave, because I don't think it's necessarily
I
was
understand.
Dave's choice, but they have gone pretty generic.
And
And you do lose that. I mean, you do lose the detail of who said what, or what the thoughts really were.
right.
And I would agree, probably people aren't going to go back and watch the tape, so.
I just think that's not right, and I think we need to. I would be much. That was the thing that struck me when I read the minutes right off the bat was, well, I know I talked a lot, so, and I like to hear myself talk, right? So I didn't see a lot of my comments in the minutes. I'm not going, well, geez, I don't even remember what my comments were. Now I could go back and watch the video, I suppose.
And I think these are different than they have historically been, and I looked at it as probably with the transition, because I know they were trying to figure out how to even use the software and get what needed to get done, so kind of looked at them that way, but did not realize that it was a direction from above, that it was, and that may be too strong of a word.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to, it's not an issue of assigning blame. I mean, we've obviously had a lot of transition in the township, and a big transition with the clerk's office. It's also worth mentioning that the deputy clerk position is currently vacant, and the deputy clerk was assisting with doing the minutes until she resigned her position. The point being, there's been a lot of transition, and with the new software and everything else, we are kind of trying to figure this all out again as we go. We're getting better at it, and we're coming up with better processes. But to Trustee Kalani's point, there's still improvements to be made, and I'm more than happy to have these conversations with you and the township manager and Chair Fox and whoever wants to be involved, because I do think there may be a difference of opinion of what's actually reflected in the written version of the minutes versus what's available if you are inclined to watch the video, and I don't necessarily disagree with anything anyone's saying. At the same time, I got to do what I'm told, so this is a good discussion that we need to continue to have.
Well, at the end of the day, it's the planning commission that makes that decision, not the manager.
Fair enough.
So the planning board commission is the body that decides how their minutes are going to be.
Yeah, take a look at some of the previous of the last year or two. Just pull them up online, because are they there?
Sure.
Yeah, they are. I don't go back and look at them. Just take a look and see if you think the detail is, and let's get some feedback from people.
Okay.
I assume these were a little more generic, because I knew there was some stumbling on trying to get them together with the system and staff and people that knew all the details
We're
of
trying
how
to
to
get caught
run
up.
it.
You know, we've
Yeah.
got 2 meeting minutes in front of you tonight. We wanted to get caught up. We didn't want to get too far
Right.
down the road without getting our meeting minutes approved.
Okay.
Given everything I'm hearing, I wouldn't be opposed to not taking any action, at least on the January 29th minutes tonight, and having an opportunity to take a better crack at it.
Does that work for everyone?
Yeah, we
Do
can
it.
table, I'll move the
Just
table, the minutes from January 29th.
So if I can chime in, I would agree.
Could you do a second first? All right, thanks. You're good. Okay, now go.
Okay.
Any comments?
Was that the second?
Yeah.
That's the second.
It's a second, good. There's a second, thank you. So I just want to chime in and say that I'm in agreement, that I think more detail should be there, and specifically, well, Sue, first of all, I'm glad you noticed that, right? So you noticing it is what caused the conversation, and agreed, it's a good conversation. But in regards to the 9-acre parcel, Joe, if you folks, if you trustees are looking at this offline, and you might not go to the level of wanting to pull up the video, have it loaded, review it, right? When you're used to the paper form, that specific parcel, a 9-acre parcel, I did have the comment of, oh, don't they seem kind of close together? And then the comment was, no, they were 20 feet apart, Tom, that's similar to the neighborhood adjacent to it. And I said, okay, good. But in that, and there was other dialogue, so you folks, you need to know that. So I think that's, more detail should be put in there, and I think that, Larry, we were used to that. I think it's the transition point, so
I assumed it was.
I'm glad you noticed it.
All right, so we have a motion to table from Commissioner Kalani, a second from Commissioner Murphy. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay. Call to the public. Anybody have something they want to say? No public hearing, so we'll move to item 8A, which is our comprehensive plan amendment, our updated schedule. And I guess we'll turn it over to our planning director.
Still getting over why nobody liked my minutes.
Oh, wait.
Blame it on the software, that usually works.
Yeah. I wouldn't be that far wrong when I did it.
All right.
Okay, so as the Planning Commission is well aware, we are in the midst of updating the Township's comprehensive plan. It's a comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2004, was updated in 2011, and now we're doing a 5-ish year update that we started last fall and continuing into this spring. We had a schedule that of how, the dates that we were going to hit, the milestones that we were going to hit to get to the point where the Planning Commission would be ready to recommend a draft of the comprehensive plan to the Township Board. We took a reprieve in that schedule, again, with the passing of Clerk Hopkins, with appointing a new Township Clerk and appointing a new Township Board liaison to the Planning Commission. We also had a pretty full meeting late January with a lot of site plans. So for all those reasons, we took a reprieve from the comprehensive plan update, but we had a good meeting, and when I say we, I mean myself and my planner, Kim Sherschlick. We had a good meeting with Larry Fox. We came up with an updated schedule. It's that schedule that you have in front of you. So one of the things we'd like to have a discussion with the Planning Commission tonight, or at least a consensus, is that this can be the new schedule, that we can hit these new milestones. In particular, maybe the key milestone at this point is having a public workshop on April 16th. And if we're going to get to having a workshop on April 16th, there need to be some key decisions made by the Planning Commission over the next 3 meetings. So we want to get going on making some of those key decisions. And at some point in that process, we are required to send out notices to various agencies that we are going to have that public workshop. We also want to reach out to any individual property owners if theirs is a property that's a specific interest in an update to the comprehensive plan. They should be notified of that and given an invitation to come and be heard. So, what I hope to accomplish tonight is for the Planning Commission to come to a consensus that this can be the new schedule for the update to the comprehensive plan. And I would like to start some discussion on what properties on the future land use map do have the greatest potential for redesignation. We've had a lot of analysis up to this point on what of our future land use designations we need more of, and we've talked a little bit about maybe it could be over here, maybe it could be over there, but it's always been in the context of we'll make those decisions later. Well, later is upon us now. It's on the Planning Commission to start making some of those decisions of if we know we need more medium-density urban future land use designations, we need to start talking about where they are going to be. And hopefully be able to do that over the next 3 meetings so that we can have a productive workshop on April 16th. As we've already discussed a little bit, one of the requests that came up at the January 29th meeting was we talked about our planned industrial research and development future land use designation, and we talked about how it may be one of the land use categories that may have some of its properties redesignated. And if so, would we be losing too much of our developable property that is designated for planned industrial research and development? So we did do some analysis on how much of it does Hartland Township have compared to some of our neighboring peer communities, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We provided a summary of all the land use designations that we've gone over the last few months and what the outcome of those discussions were. So we have a good idea of what we as a staff and you as a Planning Commission have agreed are the land use designations that the township could benefit by having more of. We've given you yet again the copy of the future land use map where we took a Sharpie and blacklined the properties that we think we all agree could be looked at a little bit closer for redesignation. But what I'm hoping tonight is that we can get started on some very good dialogue and some good the start of some decisions on some properties or clusters of property or areas of property that could be redesignated on our 2015 future land use map. And I've got some ideas of where we could get started if you want to hear those, but otherwise we just want to have an open discussion, start from there, and may look to the Planning Commission to know how we want to proceed.
Yeah, and the thing I was going to point out on the calendar is we left 3 meetings prior to April 16th to continue this discussion.
One of which is this one, though.
Yes.
Yes.
But we have members that come in and out of
Yes.
meetings and all those types of things, and we could get some strong direction to it, and hopefully we'll allow those that are absent to catch up. But it may or may not take that many meetings, in addition to throwing agenda items in there when you have applicants in.
And we do have applicants.
This actually was the agenda. This was the sequence of events that was originally approved, and all we did was count the meetings that we missed and move the dates.
Essentially,
I think it's 3 meetings.
That's about right, yeah.
3 meetings that we were off for whatever those reasons were, and we just said, well, the schedule originally was agreed to, so let's just move them all 3 meetings and keep it the same. So this is the same schedule you agreed to with a modification of 3 meeting dates on everything. So those are my comments on the calendar. I don't know if anybody would like to comment how they'd like to start, or would you like to hear Dave's suggestion, opinions?
I'd like to hear Dave's thoughts on maybe some of the changes in designations.
So there's a couple, if we want to ease into a couple things, there's maybe some low-hanging fruit, and I'll show you what I mean when I say that. So on the screen is the 2011 future land use map, and if I can find my zoom in tool. Never mind, I'll do it this way. That's what I want. For example, southeast corner of US 23 and M59. So this big, hey, we can start using our new laser pointers. That orange property right there, that is the Hartland, yeah, we can all do it.
There's one.
Yeah.
Right there. Orange.
That is the Hartland Walmart. Currently shown on our 2011 future land use plan as multiple family residential. I think we can all say with some certainty that property is not going to be redeveloped anytime soon from a Walmart to medium density, multifamily. So that would be, I would think, a cleanup item that we would want to fix that one.
All right.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Agree, that's- yeah.
You said low-hanging fruit.
All right, so next week,
Motion to adjourn?
I got something done.
Am I,
I remember that because I remember it was actually a platted subdivision,
yes.
if I'm not mistaken.
That was the time.
Good memory, see?
Now, this is a little bit harder to read because the properties get so close together. So now we're up in the Hartland Village area. And we've talked about this before, but on this map, as you zoom in, the road gets pretty wide and it gets hard to read, I grant you. But on the east side of Avon, between Kraus Road and School Street, I believe, all the properties on the east side are designated the village commercial designation, and all the properties on the west side are designated as village residential. And this was, as we've had a discussion, and Trustee Claney, probably before your time, this is the result of a mapping error that went back into the late 80s, early 90s, and it's something that we want to clean up on the zoning map side of things, but it would further justify our efforts to do that in the very near future if it was also reflected on the future land use map, so that when we go to do that township-initiated rezoning along the west side of Avon, from Kraus to, I think, Phelps Street, we can say with a straight face that it's consistent with the township's future land use map. Keeping in mind that the village commercial land use designation and the corresponding limited commercial zoning district still allow single-family residential, but they also allow some limited small-scale retail and office and the types of things you see in a mixed-use downtown that, would hopefully enhance our ability to approve some quality reuse and redevelopment in the village district.
I would agree with that. And then this area here, I remember, and it goes further down, it's also designated future land use of village commercial.
Yes.
And there was considerable discussion back in 2004 over that. I don't know if you remember. Obviously, that's where Springer Field is located, and then you have the further down the public with the fire hall and the Hero Building, and then further down. Are we going to have some discussion on that? Because I'm wondering if that makes any sense to continue having that as future village commercial in light of it seems to me it fits with the quasi-public across the street.
I guess my only question would be, and I would be fine, is this version of the comprehensive plan limited to residential designations right now? Or is this a cleanup thing too? And I'm fine either way.
Our motivation in taking this whole process on, our overall motivation, as you're all well aware, is we want to do our best to ensure that Hartland Township's land use plan is set up to accommodate the future residential development that we all recognize we are in the market for. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't do these cleanup things, such as cleaning up the Walmart property. And if this is a cleanup item, then let's do it. I would remind you that, and again, this gets hard to recognize when the lines get zoomed in and they get so big. Here on the corner, that's the tea house.
Yeah, the tea.
Time well spent. Next door is some single family. You're right, then we get down into Springer Field, and then further down is the fire station, the old township hall. So if we did want to call this the public quasi-public, that would certainly make sense, but we would want to split it up in here, because I don't know that we want the tea room to be public quasi-public.
Right. I agree.
And maybe there's something different under that thick black line, to be honest with you.
Is it really going to be anything else?
Our vision there was possibly having commercial come down through there. I don't see that ever happening with the Walmart and Myers and all that being where it is today.
Yeah.
If anything, that would be, if it was converted, be converted to some sort of residential, perhaps.
Probably, yeah.
But I think nobody's going to want to live next to the highway.
I think that's a good point. There's a lot of other places it's probably the perfect use.
Right. For what it is now.
For what it is right now. Agree, Tom?
Yeah, sure do.
Okay. So those might be my ideas for low-hanging fruit, at least so far. This one is tricky. So this is Chestnut Development, Mr. Gronow's property. Obviously, we've had this property come before the Planning Commission a couple times, and it's going to be in front of the board on Tuesday. Part of the mystery or ambiguity, I suppose, of this property is that it is designated on the future land use map as public, quasi-public. The reason behind that is when the land use map was last updated, this property was owned by the Detroit Presbytery, and it was always assumed that they were going to build a church there someday, so the future land use map was designed to account for that. Now that the Presbytery has obviously sold that property to a residential developer, the big question that we're still trying to come to an answer to, and part of that discussion is going to be at the board level on Tuesday, is what is the appropriate future land use designation for that property? And it goes back to density. What is the proper, if it is going to be residential, what is the proper residential density for that property? As you can see, the property surrounded in on virtually all sides is the medium suburban density residential designation. And again, the big question is, does it make sense to have anything other than that on that kind of postage stamp in the middle of it? And the Planning Commission has had these discussions. We had this discussion recently, January 29th, and as we talked about earlier this evening, there was something of a consensus that the density could work if it's a quality plan.
My thought is I'd leave it I don't know, I mean,
on the one hand, not to jump in, on the one hand, you don't want to put the cart before the horse and redesignate it in the middle of a review process.
exactly, that's where I was going to go. We were already in the review, yeah.
But at the same time, at some point, I don't think we want that piece of property show up as public, quasi-public on our future land use map that we're hopefully going to adopt later this year. And maybe this is a discussion that would be better to have after the board has their discussion on Tuesday. But I want to bring it to your attention that that's one that it shouldn't say that. And
What are you suggesting it should be? I mean, all the way around it is residential, right? Which is medium residential.
yes,
So,
I would.
suggesting that it should be redesignated as medium residential.
Well,
That's
or if not, what would the next step up be? The medium urban density, because it is of a higher density, as we've all discussed, than, say, Autumn Woods, and certainly of a higher density than San Marino. And if the Planning Commission has already, come to something of a consensus that something of that higher density could be appropriate there, then that would be that higher density is to go to that medium urban density residential land use designation. Just as a reminder, so what's proposed, you don't design your...
The thing about maybe future land use to a higher density, you make the comment, we could see it if it was a higher quality development. We don't have a asterisk after that category that says if it's a higher quality development. So I would be inclined to do it the same as everything around it, and then you work with the higher quality development and the density. But that would be the way I would look at it. Otherwise, you could build what your neighbor's got. Now, how does that affect the applicant?
Right. I mean, part of the context of this is, let's say Mr. Gronow just wins the lottery and he punts on this whole project tomorrow, and it's back to being a vacant piece of property that's for sale. Whoever the buyer is going to want to know, well, what's the land use designation? And I would agree, we can't redesignate a property on our long-range vision plan, which is what this is, based on the development that's on the table tonight, or currently.
And I would say in the last 5 years, we've probably had 3 people in on that parcel for different proposals on that land.
I say leave it for now what it is, and
Leave it as the...
let the board discuss further what's going on there. If indeed Bronow gets the go-ahead to go forward with it, he's probably going to build it. I mean, the longer he waits.
you would think he would. He's going that far.
Yeah, he's gone that far, so. And at that point, do we need to, and then you just do.
Well, the fortunate thing on this one is you can wait because we're not adopting this map anytime real quick. We got a little time on it. We just can't forget it.
It's a bit of a hot topic right now. I mean, it's going to be, I'll say it again, in front of the board on Tuesday, and not for any formal approvals. The board's job this coming Tuesday is going to be the same as the Planning Commission's job on January 29th, which is to give the applicant some valuable feedback of whether they, as the board, see it as a viable, feasible development.
And then I might even say leave it alone until later in his process, because I'll still come back and say we don't have designations that say as long as it's a high-quality development, because you can go through and do that on everything. Sure. But if they come in with a PD and we start trading things off, well, that's how you get that taken care of. So I'd be inclined to leave it alone and nothing more than what's around it, unless he's a done deal.
Okay?
Because the next guy could be something totally different that you don't like.
Sure. Right, and maybe this goes without saying, I think we can all agree what it's not. I mean, it's not commercial, it's not planned industrial, it's some form of residential, and most likely, well, maybe I don't necessarily want to assume this. I mean, one of the proposals that has come along was assisted living, and I think, Chair Fox, you joined us at one of those meetings. There was a lot of... We looked at that proposal and thought that we need a facility like this in Hartland Township. We don't know that we need it on that location. So I think we can agree that property should be redesignated to some form of a single-family residential. It's a question of the density. Okay.
I'm just curious, you mentioned urban medium residential designation, right? What would the density be on a 9-acre parcel if it were that?
Well, it's 1 unit per half to a third of an acre, so potentially if you've got 9 acres, that's as many as 27 units. And he's proposing 25, so that's right in that. I mean, that's 18 to 27 units.
And all I'm saying is if you went and did that, and somebody came in and they gave you a development you didn't like, that's that asterisk about high-quality development thing that makes me say, but are you going to live with anything at that density? Because that's what it could be, anything.
We know it's not going to be a church or a school or anything that's public, quasi-public.
Right.
It's one we're going to have to address. Okay. So we talked at the January 29th meeting about the possibility of looking at some of our larger tracts of undeveloped properties that are currently designated planned industrial research and development. And in particular, I'm moving toward the southwest corner of Bergen and Old 23. Right at the corner is, as you can see, the dark purple. That's the planned industrial research and development. And then south of that, this is the old Camp Tamarack that is now under private ownership. So this whole area is likely not going to be undeveloped, 20 years from now. I'd have to predict that something is going to, it's too high value piece of land for it not to be developed sometime in the foreseeable future. So then we have talked in the past about, is that an area that has the potential for redesignation from something other, at least right on the corner, something other than the planned industrial research and development. And that's where the conversation started with, well, if we give up that much of our developable industrial land, will we still have enough? And that conversation evolved into, well, how much do our peer communities have? And that's part of the analysis that you have in your packet this evening. We did take some time to look at our peer communities, the communities on all four sides of us, and then kitty-cornered us, to see what percent of their future land use map is some form of industrial designation. And I think you can see that we are probably above the average. I mean, Brighton Township is a bit of an outlier because of the proving grounds. But given where we are relative to some of our other communities, I don't know that we're low on the amount of property that we have designated for industrial research and development, keeping in mind that we also have this whole pocket of land at the US 23 interchange that also has that designation and is also mostly undeveloped, and arguably is of a higher likelihood of being developed as such, given the freeway access, the freeway visibility. So I would be interested to see if we have any more thoughts on, and I'm not advocating for as such, but if we have any further thoughts on, in particular, the southwest corner of Bergen and
Well, this one came up.
Yes.
I think part of it came up because of its location with all the residential around it. Part of it came up because of its easy access for roads. You have sewer there. You've got water that comes down, I think, within a half a mile or so of that.
That's why that's behind you.
So the extension is there. I think as you look into Brighton Township, it's all residential. I view that somewhat of a major gateway into to here. I don't think you're going to see a big factory sitting there because you got to work with that M59 interchange, and I think the stuff up at Clyde's a better location for it, personally. All the lots that are between Old 23 and US 23, those little slivers, are never going to amount to anything big because the parcels are so small and oddly shaped.
Yep.
So they're always going to be little type, well, what they are right now.
Yeah, and I know this wasn't what you meant when you said big factory.
Right.
There's certainly other things that could be developed. Just
Correct.
mentioning, there's other things that could be developed in that planned industrial research and development. An
That's
office
correct.
park, a high-tech park, a hospital, a medical campus. And it's worth noting, and this certainly isn't a reason for the Planning Commission to make a decision, but the owner of those properties is interested in these conversations and is likely going to want to be part of the public workshop on April 16th, because they have expressed interest in doing some residential development on that corner. And I've had conversations with them that this is a conversation that's ongoing with the Planning Commission about the future land use map. Feel free to be part of our meetings. So I guess my point is that while I'm certainly not advocating for it, the interest in there, and apparently the indications are the market is there for that to be something other than the future land use designation that it currently has.
I think it's a better location than some of the options on 59, because I don't think the residential along 59 is desirable by the people living right on 59, personally. And that is another reason that I would support that corner and think it's a better location than some of the others that are on this map.
Actually, there had been some discussion many years ago that the area, between Pleasant Valley Fenton Road and M59 being much more having that research and development for those same reasons. It's kind of developed all different ways right now. I think it's a combination of mixed use and commercials. It's going to end up in residential as well. I don't have any problem with that. I wonder though whether a portion of the section that is on Bergen would, because it's right across from the industrial industrial condominiums that are right there, whether or not a portion of that would remain. So I see that there's two large, what are those, 80 acres or 160?
Can you blow that back?
Sorry,
Can you blow that back up for us?
I'm going to try.
In any case, there's two large parcels. I could almost see agreeing with you, Larry, that makes more sense to have residential in those two larger parcels, but maybe setting aside a portion across from
Fox Brothers.
Fox Brothers as a buffer to kind of, make that, you're still going to, I think, have a portion of industrial, and it would fit. I don't think anyone, unless it's just an entrance into a new residential development.
Well, I would think an entrance in would be a good thing, off of Bergen and Old 23, if you had a residential, because I think it gives you some public safety benefits and alternatives and all those types of things.
But I agree. I could support something like that, a redesignation. Hear what other people have to say.
I think I'll add one thing, and then, one time, I believe, unless I just played it out in my head, we had a conversation, and you could always make that more of what Pleasant Valley and 59 are.
Make a special use
Almost
designation?
make it, if that was of something that was interest. But I don't think the conversation went very deep, but it was, if that was an interest of, do you want something like that there or not?
You know, I mean, maybe that should be part of the workshop, of the discussion, having another plan. What do we call that?
Special planning area.
Special planning area?
Now, keep in mind that the special planning area, the way it's defined, it also includes a commercial component. In fact, it seeks a commercial component. The idea is that it's a community of itself, a mixed-use community where the residents could potentially, walk to the drugstore and get what they need, or the grocery store, and not have to get in their cars and go down the road. So if this were a property that we were looking at for something similar, then my follow-up question would be, does that include the commercial component?
I thought the conversation was more if we could define what we were looking for in the special planning area. You could call it the title, but maybe we changed what it was, including what the definition of special planning area was at Pleasant Valley 59. I don't know whether the purchaser of that property is thinking along those lines or not. I know them a little bit, but I'm not familiar with them in any commercial elements of development.
I was going to give you an update on them in the planner's report. We did have a meeting with them today. Who they are, the principal purchaser is Mayberry Homes out of Lansing, and their bread and butter is single-family residential. But they have also spoken to the township, and we as the township wouldn't necessarily be opposed of partnering with some other developers whose bread and butter is other things, such as 55 and older active adult living type places. Someone else who they're talking to is assisted living and memory care, and we don't know that as long as it's all incorporated as part of a bigger, as part of a quality development, we don't know that we'd be opposed to some sort of an assisted living. It may actually make sense if there's adult active senior living adjacent, then that may be a logical transition. I don't know that they are actively seeking a commercial partner. So there was a time where the Kroger store was envisioned on that corner. I don't know that that's anything that's going to be coming back. But the special planning area as it's defined right now, whether it's this developer or whether they, let's say these guys win the lottery and they walk away, and the next guy may be more interested in incorporating more of a commercial component.
Well, one thing, and Joe, one thing about the industrial crossing over the road, Foxborough's got a decent buffer there. Some of it's natural, and we did require them to add it, and if you bring the industrial across the street, all they're going to do is add another buffer because you're going to have a house backing up to it. So the street may be as good of a buffer, and the developer, whoever would develop that, is going to want to buffer it themselves if they expect to sell the houses that back up to Bergen Road. So I like the access for it, I like the utilities for it and their availability because it is fairly close. Is that water and green there, or what is that green line?
That's pretty wet right there.
Yeah, no, I mean, what's that fluorescent green line?
Oh, that's sewer.
Oh, okay.
That is, well, in particular, the force main sewer.
Okay. You got sewer down to Old 23 coming down Bergen Road, and you got water just north of there, because there are fire hydrants along there. I can't recall where they end. So the part of allowing some density there is taken care of with the utilities, and the infrastructure costs wouldn't be massive to the point that it would be prohibitive to do it.
So I also like the idea for that area to be considered rezoned to, what is adjacent to it? Is it medium suburban?
Yeah, I think it could step up in density a little bit, maybe, just because it's moving closer to the center.
It is the medium suburban.
Currently. So for so many reasons that have already been listed, is that, and what wasn't mentioned but was mentioned at one of our last meetings, is the location so close to the school, right? So that's, the crossroads the availability to get on the freeway, to have the utilities there, to have the adjacent neighborhoods already there, the buffers that you make mention of. If we're looking for an area, I think, to expand into, I like that location.
Well, and I like coming out of Brighton Township with it, because they're all residential, coming into Hartland. That's all residential. And I just think Clyde Road's a better place, but that's just my personal belief.
I agree. I think that we kind of confuse
You do.
people that are looking to where would I put my next place.
Right. So that, I would be inclined to take that into a residential category of...
Medium suburban or low suburban?
I would take it up a notch from whatever, only because of it's getting closer to Old 23 and the freeway. I'd give them a little bit more density there and transition from what you have.
Would we end up with apartment buildings?
No, not that high. No.
Right, so a couple things. You don't necessarily want to redesignate it to a land use designation that we already have plenty of, because that would kind of defeat the purpose.
Right.
The designations that we have agreed in prior discussions that the township could benefit from more of is the medium urban, possibly the medium suburban, but certainly the medium urban. And that's where, we have all seen that the market is hot for right now, is the tighter lots, the smaller homes, not the large estate homes with a lot of grass to be cut and things like that, but the smaller lots. So if we have agreed that that's a designation that we need more of, then I would be inclined to think that there is a possibility for it, is that corner, or somewhere in that, maybe not the entirety of the undeveloped portions of that corner, but some healthy portion of it.
And on the north side, that cobblestone preserve,
Yes.
is that a medium urban density? Or is
That is the medium suburban density.
Okay.
What's the one denser than that? Because I was thinking you could take that all the way to these smaller homes or even condos. We just don't have a good place for condos, and we need to find one.
Like detached?
Like duplex-type, detached condo type of a thing.
So now you're getting into multiple family. If we're getting into attached.
All right. Well, I was just looking for a nice piece of property where you could find a nice condominium development. We do not have anything in Hartland.
And you guys don't need a reminder that this isn't zoning that we're talking about.
I understand, but
Land use.
it gives the guidance
Yes.
to where it's going to go. I understand that portion.
If it helps in any of the conversation, the medium urban residential, which is what we've talked about that the township could benefit from more of, is the 2 to 3 units per acre density. The medium suburban, which Commissioner Grissom is what cobblestone is, for example, that's closer to the 1 to 2 units per acre. The medium suburban.
What's Mill Point?
Mill Point's a bit of its own animal, but that is the.
There you're probably looking at 3 to an acre, aren't you? 2? What are those lots? Quarter?
Those might be closer to 4 per acre.
Yeah, it's probably 4 per acre. There's 206 homes on a 160.
I'd have to look that up.
Can't remember how many.
So Mill Point was a consent judgment, right? That was to be a mobile home community at one point, and township went to court, and this is all well before my time and maybe a lot of your time. But you can kind of see from the layout of it how there was a time where it was meant to be a mobile home community. That's why they're so tight, and the kind of the grid pattern.
Well, that might be a little too dense.
Yeah.
So Dave, these are both medium urban, both Cobblestone and Mill Point?
No.
They're not. It's, well, in the paperwork, it's on page 19 that it does say Mill Point of Hartland and Cobblestone.
Let me make sure. Yes, Cobblestone and Mill Point, as far as the land use designation, are both medium urban. I misspoke earlier. Cobblestone is probably the less dense end of medium urban.
Yeah, they are 1 unit per acre because they're still on well and septic. Or
They were, and this is another story from before my time that I don't know well enough. They were supposed to hook up to the sewer when it came along Bergen, and somehow that didn't happen, and you could probably ask 10 different people and get 10 different stories of how that happened. But the part of the reason the sewer is there is so that Cobblestone could hook up, and it didn't happen. So, and I know we're not making this decision tonight, but I'd like to start getting toward that. Medium urban density
Is what
in this neck of the woods
That's orange?
is this orange with the polka dots or whatever you want to call
Or
it.
at least that.
Yeah.
And that's where you're in the neighborhood of something like cobblestone. And I
You
believe,
will end up with, if you do that and the market's there for it, you'll end up with a mill point.
okay.
If that's what your designation is, somebody's going to think about doing that type
Yes.
of product.
What is the one less than that, then?
The medium
suburban.
That's, we have a lot of them already.
Yeah,
That's 11%.
and we don't necessarily need
that's
any
your San
more.
Marino. Now you're getting into the larger lots that the market tells us that's not what
Which-
people are out for right now.
Which fits, though, with what's there now, right?
Well, it does. I was trying to transition to it off of the highway and everything in the center.
Is there
So-
something we can, is there a medium one?
Well, now you're talking about creating new
Could
land
we
use designations,
create
which
yellow and orange
now's the time to do
together?
it. Yeah.
Another color.
I'm already struggling with the colors. I must be getting colorblind in my old age. But another example of medium urban of a fairly recent development is just down the road here, Hartland, no, not Hartland Estates, Heritage Meadows, just on the east side of Clark Road. An example of what can be done within that land use designation.
Well, they can also do cluster developments.
They could do a lot of things.
See,
Well,
I
I think
think that's fine, don't you?
I don't have any problem with that, and I was just about to ask the question, is the characteristics of that property lend itself to more of a something like that because of the wet?
It does. Do you have the satellite? It does have wet and woods on it,
Yeah.
particularly as you push to the residential away from Old 23.
So if you get, maybe we're worried about something for nothing, and
Right.
that's
I think you could probably make it orange, the same as cobblestone.
Okay. So, I'm just looking at the clock here. Maybe if we could look at maybe one more, what I'm calling a focus area, a focal point. And we've already talked about it a little bit, and that's M59 in Pleasant Valley. I don't know if we should start with the aerial or with the land use. So, Hartland Township has a purchase agreement in place with the buyer for this 30 acres on the north side of 59, 78 acres on the south side, and then this 40 acres also on the south side is under private ownership, but all three of them collectively, 1, 2, 3, are what we call the special planning area. And I don't suggest that we're going to change that, but an area but there are some other undeveloped properties in that neighborhood that perhaps are worth a discussion, whether it continues tonight or if we want to wait on it. North side of 59, on the east side of Pleasant Valley, this is a large vacant piece here, probably 20 acres, large vacant piece here. And then
you got the Hartland Glen parcel.
Heartland Glen, I'm not sure if we want to touch that right now.
That's what I was going to say. We're probably not going to touch that.
Watch what we say.
now.
And then the gravel extraction operation, which is still going strong as far as I know, but it's typically what happens with the old gravel pits is they turn into some fairly nice lakefront residential developments someday. I don't know where someday is with them. I haven't checked in. But it may be worth looking at that, whether that's...
Well, there's two things over there. You got the gas sweetening plant that's going to be abandoned.
It's already in process, yes?
Yeah, so now that's just south of the gravel pit.
Yep, so Lone Tree Road is where I'm moving my cursor back and forth. Sweetening plant is on the Dunleavy farm. It's this square right here, and it is being decommissioned. We may be getting a little far south. If we start talking about the south side of Lone Tree Road, I wonder if that is an area that's more appropriate for the large estate, agricultural, pastoral, residential development. And I may say the same if this weren't already a gravel pit.
That was probably more of the medium don't you think?
The gravel pit?
Yeah.
Or
Maybe large-
or a state.
Or a state.
If you think about, the water, think about what they did at Commerce and Hickory Ridge at the northeast corner there, right? That was a gravel pit there, and those are,
What is Brighton doing? Brighton had a gravel pit there. What is that one that's down Old 23? What's that called?
Beach Lake?
No.
Shenandoah?
Not Shenandoah.
Oh, Morgan Lake.
Morgan
Lake
Lake.
Estate.
Morgan Lake.
Well, I wonder
Yeah,
if
those
that's-
are...
I haven't been in there, so I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah. Oh, those are nice.
They're very nice, yeah. So I would guess that those are probably 1 acre lots.
I would say they're about that.
Yeah.
I would have to say as a guess.
I would agree with you on that.
So to compare that to the gravel pit, that probably more realistic of what would happen there.
So the gravel pit area, which I'm drawing a blank on the name of who's
Higglers.
they're not doing the gravel, are they?
Yes.
They own that.
They own that
Yep,
too.
They're the farm on the
They're
west
the one that are
side.
actually mining it?
And they're not mining it themselves,
There's another name I associate with it.
but they own the land.
Okay. Regardless, so what it's designated right now, future land use, is the estate residential, which Hartland Township doesn't need more of. And so I just want to leave that open-ended of whether that's a possibility for going to a higher density. This mostly undeveloped property right here on the southeast corner is the orange, the multifamily, which we do know we need more of, even with the undeveloped land here. Kind of the wild card there, though, is what's to become of the special planning area, because from everything we're hearing from our partners with Mayberry Homes is that they are very interested in taking on a multifamily component with that, and most likely on the north side of the 30 acres on the north side. So that may cover a lot of Hartland Township's rental unit demand.
It might, and then I think part of the reason the orange piece on the other side of Pleasant Valley hasn't gone is you come back to it's all those utilities and availability for a multiple family. You're not going to stick a little well in the ground in a septic tank. So now it's the cost of bringing it all down that way.
Yep.
Well, once it comes down all that way and it's sitting there with the special planning area, that corner to me becomes more marketable for something.
Well, where's the sewer and water today, Dave, in that?
It ends at,
At the church, whichever, I always get the two Lutheran churches mixed up, but it ends right.
the first one to the west.
So it comes to the eastern
Is that All
boundary.
Saints? If you can see where I'm moving my cursor, it comes right to the west property line of the special planning area, the red cross-hatched. That's how the township came to own it in the first place, is because the sewer got extended to there, and then the sewer assessment got too expensive.
And how far away is water?
It's all the way down at the ice arena, stops at the ice arena. So it's about a little less than a mile and a half. That was part of the conversation we had with Mayberry Homes yesterday, was they are crunching their numbers on whether they would want to extend the municipal water main all the way to their property, or whether they want to sink a couple community wells. And they were talking to the township about, are there any options of partnering with the township on some sort of financing, special assessment district, and what I heard from the township manager is we're not necessarily opposed to that, but we would need to see what that model looks like. Point being, the water's not necessarily there, but if Mayberry Homes was to put in a water main, I think that's a potential game changer.
I think that if you want that to develop, then the municipal water needs to be down there. I don't know if they do their own
You wanna write
private
the
thing, you're
check?
going to end up with a bunch of private stuff down there. Is that really what you want? I don't know. It's not my business. I don't pretend to understand that, but it just seems like that's not the way to go.
Is in which
Bunch
respect?
of all private systems down there. Just a thought, but I understand it's very complicated.
It is. And maybe because the special planning area is a large, undeveloped piece of property, as I mentioned, 30 acres on the north, 80 acres on the south, 110 acres total, and because it's still to be determined how that's going to be developed, I don't know that's not... Is there something to be said for giving them their 5 years to build that out and seeing what becomes of it, and then when those of us who are still here 5 years from now are talking about that 5-year master plan update, is it then that we say, okay, now that we know that we've got X number of apartments over there and X number of single family,
I mean, I wouldn't be inclined to take that orange and change it to something less dense. Is that what we're talking about?
We're talking about all options. I would guess that the orange is something of a transition area from what's next door to that, which is the Hartland Estates, or excuse me, the Hartland Meadows manufactured home community.
It's a perfect transition.
Actually, that density is the same between multifamily residential is 1 unit per 1/8 acre, which is orange, and then the high-density residential is which is the manufactured homes, is also 1 unit per 1/8 acre. So those are actually the same.
As far as density, yes. The high density, as you mentioned, is specifically for manufactured housing communities.
So that's actually less than 1 per 1/8 acre.
No, the difference, I guess, between the high-density residential and the multifamily residential is the high-density residential is specifically for manufactured housing communities. The multifamily, that could be for apartments, attached condominiums, some sort of 4-story condo development, I mean, any sort of attached owner-occupied or rental units. Whereas the other one, even though the densities are the same, the other one is specifically manufactured housing.
Shouldn't we look at some of this area? I know that what you started off the meeting talking about looking at residential and what we need in terms of land use, but you still need to have things to support residential.
Yes.
And so, shouldn't we also be looking at potential quasi-public and commercial up there as well in that area?
Well, at least within the special planning area, the quasi-public and the commercial could be incorporated with it.
Right.
If you're talking about, are you talking about a geographic area other than special planning?
Well, I just think 59 is such a, at the end of the day, that's where commercial wants to be on a major highway. So,
they also want water and sewer, though.
And they also want water and sewer, and that's what's going to drive and bring that water and sewer down in order to make that happen. So I'm just wondering if some of this, I know it would be taking away in some of that area as potential commercial.
Front of it.
The front of it.
Or that northeast corner, same thing, piece there. Because I agree, I think you need to have we'll just use the word, little neighborhood service commercial stuff there.
Right.
I don't think that's the place for Kroger, personally, but if that's where they wanted to be. But I do think it would be nice to have a place for dry cleaning, pick some stuff up. But I think you could put a gas station out there and be very successful.
I think so, too. Agreed.
Okay, so let me ask a question this way. The gas station, the dry cleaner, the neighborhood drugstore, these are the kind of things you're talking, maybe not the gas station, but the dry cleaner, the neighborhood service type
Small strip
businesses.
center type situation.
Do we agree that those could, one way or another, be incorporated into the special planning area as part of a mixed-use development? So
I think so, but what I'm hearing from Mayberry Homes, they aren't thinking about that, right?
That's not their model. That's not the business they're in. They're not opposed to partnering. But based on the conversation we had yesterday, it doesn't sound like at this stage they, at least that they've disclosed to us, have any commercial partners that they're close with yet.
Which, if they're not going to go that route, would make you more inclined to take some of that neighboring parcel and
that's where I was going.
Adjust it.
Right, adjust it. Exactly.
All good thoughts. I wonder, so a reminder that how we all got started with this whole process a year ago was focusing on the residential. Keep in mind that the Township Board, and it's in our 2016 strategic plan, is we're likely to do a brand new comprehensive plan, not these, updates, but within the next couple of years we wanted a whole new comprehensive plan, and what was envisioned was, it is at that time that we're going to look at commercial and industrial and office.
And that may be, I'm just sitting here thinking about just what we just talked about, that if we're going to be redesignating some of the area like around the gravel pit or further south, however we designate those parcels or whatever. We have some higher density already being planned and existing just south of 59 at Pleasant Valley. Then it might make sense to reconsider some of that, like the north, like the yellow portion that's just north on the north side of Pleasant Valley, Fenton Road. Yeah, I mean, it could be that area there that's set aside right now. That's CA, right?
Zoning, yes.
The zoning is CA. So.
Well, maybe we do follow where we were going with the residential. It probably it's not gonna happen before we get this done and get into the whole new plan.
Yes.
And Mayberry will be farther along,
Yes.
and maybe that's when we hit that commercial component on that corner, if it's not being addressed.
Okay.
We're gonna stick to residential.
Commercial or office or something.
Right, but we'll just stick to the residential components now and make sure we don't lose that thought as we move into Phase 2 of this comprehensive plan.
And the one thought I had, maybe this isn't the kind of thought that good planners should have, is would Hartland Township look silly if we designated for more commercial retail, given how much undeveloped commercial retail we have currently?
That's true, but you're right. It may look silly, but at one point in time, that special planning area there was also being looked at by one of the major medical facilities. And I'll be honest with you, I think that's still a possibility, not necessarily there, but given our location, maybe we need to look at some designations that encourages some of the medical facilities to take a hard look at ours, because a lot of those same people who work at those facilities want to live close by. They don't want to be stuck in a car. They can drive, and they want a nice school district. They want to, so I don't know. Is there something we can look at that?
That sounds to me like something we look at harder when we get into a wholesale, a new comprehensive plan. The other thing I'd mention to that is those types of facilities, the medical, they definitely want municipal water. A lot of times for licensing requirements, as I understand it, if you're doing assisted living, you have to have a treated municipal water source.
That makes sense.
And I'll remind you that the existing municipal water source is a mile plus down the road.
For now.
But you have to have enough going on to make that mile-long pipe cost-effective to go in, so you have to create that environment with the map, if that's what we want.
Right.
Because they got to be looking at it like a Mayberry and going, okay, we can partner with this, we can do this with the township, and there's all these other pieces around us. And Mayberry would probably, to be honest with you, love it if other things came out around them besides just themselves.
They would love it if they put the pipe in the ground, the water pipe, if the development that came in after that could reimburse them. And that's part of what they want to talk to the township board about.
So when will Mayberry have a plan to bring to the board?
So they are, per the purchase agreement, they are to get a conceptual plan development plan to the township by September. 6 months from March, so yeah, September. They are going to be on the Township Board's agenda on Tuesday. They're seeking a 30-day extension on some of those deadlines for some things that happen beyond their control, and it's going to be up to the board whether to grant that extension, and if they do, that'll push things, including that concept plan deadline, out another month. But per the purchase agreement, we are to see a Phase 1 conceptual plan this year, by the fall. And the way they want to phase it, my understanding is they want to do the north 30 acres first, and then half of the south 80, and then the other half of the south 80. They want to do a phased plan development. Cool. But they're still crunching their numbers on how do they get water.
And they don't, the parcel to the west is still owned by Giovanetti.
Yes.
So, Dave, where are we with this today, trying to wrap this little corner up in our discussion? Did we decide anything, or did we just decide we were...
I think we decided that there's some things to talk about in a couple of years when we do a whole new comprehensive plan. I think we decided that, given what we know to be what Mayberry has in mind and the partners that they might be pulling in have in mind, that may answer a lot of the township's need for multifamily. So I wonder then if this whole corner is a better candidate for a closer reevaluation once Mayberry's further along with what they are going to do.
I think you're right.
Okay.
I would agree with you.
Okay. I'm good with
Well, then I'll leave it at that before anybody changes their mind. All right, so looking at the time and knowing that we've got a few more meetings, maybe I'll leave you with this. So, I do want to at least plant a seed that another area that I want to talk about, maybe this is at our next meeting, is the north side of Dunham Road, east of the Hartland Schools campus. We've talked about this area before. There's no municipal water service there. The municipal water service goes as far as the Hartland Fire Station, and then it goes into the school campus, but becomes a private system once it goes in the school campus. A private system owned by a public entity, I guess. But as we recall, this was an area that the housing market analysis that we had done specifically called out as a candidate for going to something higher density, and it seems to make sense. It's in close enough proximity to the schools and to the commercial hub, the potential commercial hub of the village. And so I would think maybe at our next meeting we have some good discussion about this area. But I'd like to maybe plant the seed now to hopefully have us come prepared to talk about that. Okay.
You're getting nodding heads.
Yeah, I see nodding heads. I think that's, so at least in my opinion, that's a very good start to what we hope to have accomplished here in the next 3 meetings. Okay. And as long as we can keep that momentum going and make sure everybody shows up to all the meetings. That's your job, right?
Tougher job.
Yeah.
Okay. So shall we wrap that item up tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking for a vote or a motion or anything like that. Just
No, I didn't think
good
so.
discussion and
Everybody happy? Satisfied?
Did we have to agree to the new schedule? Did we just have to,
again, that's a nodding head thing.
Okay.
I'm not looking
Good.
for a formal.
Good.
All right.
Does everybody agree?
Yeah.
Nodding heads. All right.
All right. So let's move on to item 9, call to the public. Anyone? Item 10, planners report. David?
My turn to talk?
Yes.
So I think one of the things I was going to talk about was the meeting we had with Mayberry. I think I've more or less covered that. They're still pushing hard. They've done their own market study, by the way, their own housing market study. And from, they paid for it, they own it, it's proprietary to them. But from the parts of it that they shared with us, it sounds pretty consistent with the outcome of the housing market study that the township had done. So it's good to hear that the different consultants crunch the numbers and come up with a lot of the same outcomes. We talked about how Chestnut Development is going to be on the board agenda for this Tuesday, and depending on the direction the board gives them, we'll give the applicant some determination of what he comes back to the Planning Commission with. The KFC drive-through, the drive-through component, the special land use got approved by the Township Board on February 17th. Conditional on the site plan coming back to this Planning Commission for final site plan approval. That could very well happen at our March 12th meeting. Larry Fox and I sat down with the applicant week before last and went through some revisions they had to the plans. They have now, since that meeting, formally resubmitted those plans, some very positive changes, and while our review letter is not yet wrapped up, I am inclined to think that our recommendation is going to be approval subject to some relatively minor conditions. They've stepped it up pretty good, so to their credit. The Woods Edge Site Condominium, that's the 21-unit site condo off of Maxfield Road. They would also like to be on that March 12th agenda. That's not as much of a sure thing, I think, as KFC. They've got to give us some more information on, if you recall, a lot of our conversation was, if you don't want to put in new landscaping, then we need to know what existing vegetation you're going to preserve. And so they're going to try to do a better job putting that information together and get it to us very early next week, so we have enough time to do a review and get the agenda packet out so that you folks can have a chance to review it. So that may be on March 12th. They certainly hope so, but they've got some work to do. The Parks and Recreation Plan got adopted by the Township Board on February 17th, so that plan now goes to the Michigan Department of Natural Resources for certification, and assuming it is, then we would be eligible for the new grant cycles for Parks and Recreation grants starting in April 1st. Gas station / drive-through Dunkin' Donuts / Baskin Robbins that is proposed, conceptually at least, on the corner, northeast corner of Clark and M59. We had a conceptual meeting with them, we being myself and Sheriff Fox. I'd like to think that that's a positive-looking project, and they have other locations. One's at Brighton on Grand River right off the expressway, and they have another one in Howell. I know I use the one in Brighton, and as far as gas stations go, it's a nice, clean facility. I think if they do it the same way here, it'll be a nice addition. A nice addition. Venture Church had their soft opening a couple weeks ago. They're having their grand opening this Sunday. They invited me so they can all boo me and throw tomatoes at me.
That's the river, by the way.
Excuse me. We all got to get used to that. No, I said it right. The Venture Church, formerly known as the River Church.
Formerly known as.
Yeah, there was a few too many churches that were named River Church, so they have rebranded as Venture Church. Anyway, they're having their grand opening March 1st. They still have some work to do on the site once the weather allows them. They've got a whole lot of landscaping to do. They've got to top coat their parking lot, but they are in there on a temporary occupancy permit, thanks to a lot of hard work from a lot of people behind the scenes. You may notice you have some presents in front of you. You already discovered your laser pointers. There's a pretty good training resource. Hopefully you can add that to your collection. There's also an updated list of the Planning Commission committee members' contact information, and a copy of the signed bylaws. So hopefully you can all add that to your binder, your resource binder. I will remind those of you who didn't have a chance to read my email yet that there is what looks to be some good training in Lansing on March 5th, the evening of March 5th. So that's a week from, what, Wednesday?
Thursday.
Is it Thursday? Yep. March 5th. Yes, it is. Thank you. Tom Murphy has already signed up to go. There's good training for the ZBA, that at least one of our ZBA members is going to go, and then there's a course specifically on site plan review taught by my predecessor. And long story short, if any of you are interested in going, it's March 5th, 5 to 8. Township would cover the cost of the registration, so if you're interested, let me know. And he's sitting here tonight, and I failed to mention it at our last meeting, and that was on me, but the township did appoint a new township clerk on January 27th, and that is Larry Shofu. A lot of you may know Larry. I know he's done a lot of good things in the township for a long time. So he hit the ground running, lost his deputy clerk not too long after he took office. So he's learning on the job, and we're all working together, and I'm sure Larry's going to be a great addition to the clerk's office. So if you haven't met him before, he's sitting right over there, so introduce yourself. And otherwise, that is everything on my planner's report for this evening.
All right. Item 11, committee reports. Comments, anyone, anything? Motion to adjourn, please.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Have a good night.